Zombies in the park, they're looking for my heart. A dark world aches for a splash of the sun. If I could find a way to see this straight, I'd run away to some fortune that I should have found by now. And so I run out to the things they say could restore me, restore life the way it should be. I'm waiting for this cough syrup to come down. Life's too short to even care at all. I'm losing my mind, losing control. If I could find a way to see this straight, I'd run away to some fortune that I should have found by now. And so I run out to the things they say could restore me, restore life the way it should be. I'm waiting for this cough syrup to come down. One more spoon of cough syrup now. Whoa. One more spoon of cough syrup now. Whoa. Whoa. Life's too short to even care at all. I'm losing my mind, losing control. These fishes in the sea, they're staring at me. Trying to think of a way to get started. Stutter my flow, train of thought just departed. Taste of mezcal on my breath. Let me get this off your chest. Open my mouth, all the gems falling out, make you lose control. Oh, girl, I've got that silver tongue. I got that silver tongue. Drives you into delirium. Got that silver tongue. Like I'm addicted to madness, but what can I say? I'm addicted to madness, but what can I do? I got my silver tongue. Clothes on the floor, but the bed's on the ceiling. Slurring my lines, but I'm nailing the meaning.
What is up? What is up, YouTube? Clayford08 here with another Friday Night Live Crypto with Clay. How's everybody doing this evening? Everybody in voice chat here.
Hey Clay, how's everyone doing?
What's up, dude? Let's see, we got Loki and Seeker. Those are two new names in voice chat. Glad you guys are here. Hey, y'all, donate to my Bitcoin wallet and I will subscribe to your channel. Let's not do that, my dude. Let's not post that shit in my chat. How about that? Alright, so tonight we have a lot of controversial topics that are going to be discussed. So if you're a person that gets easily offended, this might not be the best show for you tonight. But if you want to talk about some things that are going on in the current cryptocurrency world, tonight is especially important because we're going to be discussing things that affect everybody when it comes to cryptocurrencies, not just people that are large investors. It literally affects every single one of us, those of us that have money invested in these things. Okay, so tonight we've got Crypto Jake, who has been with me on every single one of these, so I'd like to give a big shout out to Crypto Jake.
Thanks, Clay. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, man. Alright, guys, so let's just jump right into the topics for today. The very first one is going to be Bitcoin. Alright, so huge debate has been ongoing for, I don't know, the past year and a half, I guess, is probably whenever it first started. Maybe 2 years ago is whenever this debate first started going on. Essentially, the debate is, how do we scale Bitcoin? How do we move on past what it's currently set at? Because, as you all know, the current blockchain, or the current block size, is 1 megabyte. Now, some of you might not know that. The current block size is 1 megabyte, and in each transaction there are signatures assigned to each specific transaction coming from the user who started the transaction. There are two sides of this debate, though. How do we go about scaling it? And one of the sides is Bitcoin Core, the other side is Bitcoin Unlimited. For those of you that don't know what these are, Bitcoin Core wants to integrate segregated witness into Bitcoin. For those of you that don't know what segregated witness is, it basically takes out those signatures that I was talking about in each block. So whenever you sign each transaction as a user, that will actually be taken out of the block, which will free up some space on each block so that other transactions can occur. Now, a lot of people seem to think that those signatures matter, but in all actuality they don't. That's what the miners are there for. They're there to uphold the ledger. So those signatures don't really mean very much on the blockchain, and they're kind of a waste of space as far as Bitcoin Core is concerned. Now, I'm not taking any sides on this. I'm just telling you guys what the debate is. Okay, on the other side of the aisle, we have Bitcoin Unlimited. So Bitcoin Core wants to keep a set cap size on every single block, meaning they want to keep it at 1 megabyte or 2 megabytes, whatever they want to set it at. With SegWit 2x, obviously they want to set it for 2 megabytes. Bitcoin Unlimited, on the other hand, wants to set it at whatever the blockchain needs at that specific time. So if a lot of transactions are coming through on the network, they can up the size to whatever they need at that specific block. So it's ever evolving. So let's say we don't have a lot of transactions occurring at one time. We can keep the block size down for that. The miners say, okay, not many transactions are occurring right now. Let's keep the block size at 1 megabyte. Whereas if a lot of transactions are flooding the network, they can say, holy shit, there's a lot of transactions, let's up this to 8 megabytes for this specific block. So it's ever transitioning when it comes to Bitcoin Unlimited's process that they would like to implement. So two completely different ideologies here, guys. And you can see why this is such a debate and why it's so crucial, because they are so very different. And so let's just get started in the panel. What do you guys think of this debate? Who do you think is right and who do you think is wrong in this?
Seems like a bit of a David and Goliath thing, maybe the whales versus everyone else. Maybe there's some interest holders that want to stay in their position versus people who want to kind of maybe grow and develop the platform.
Okay, who do you think is David and who do you think is Goliath in this scenario?
Well, the miners or the bag holders who have a vested interest in keeping the status quo, maybe their profit model is built around this particular ideology, and that's why they're rooting for it.
Okay. Does anybody else have any inputs on this? Alright, so here's the thing. Not many people realize that there has actually been an ongoing attack on the Bitcoin network for the past 18 months. There has actually been an ongoing spam attack for the past 18 months. Now, let's just put that into perspective for a second. If what I'm saying is true, that means there is an entity that is essentially trying to degrade the network as we speak. So let's talk about why they might be doing this.
Not going to hear this anywhere else, folks. This is some real in-depth action.
Okay, so a lot of people seem to think that Bitcoin Unlimited wants to essentially create this demand that isn't technically there so that they can implement their change to the blockchain, because segregated witness is not going to be able to fix an issue of spam. So this attack that I'm talking about that's been going on for the past 18 months is essentially an attacker that has been spamming the network with microtransactions, starting on a small scale up into whenever we had the 300,000 transaction backlog a couple of weeks ago. So it's been causing the market to get flooded with transactions that can't process. And in the process of doing that, people that have smaller transactions that don't want to pay high transaction fees have had to wait days for their transactions to go through on the network. And that completely goes against the idea of what Satoshi Nakamoto wanted in the beginning when he created this. I mean, he wanted to get away from fiat currencies that take forever, that have centralized nodes that essentially control where that money goes. But that's exactly where this is going. I mean, if you really think about this and like think about it for a second, like going down the road, that's exactly what this is going to cause by doing this. There are going to be people that are in control by doing this, and at the same time, it's going to take a lot longer to process these transactions by flooding the network like this and spamming the network. What's up, Gasa? Welcome to the chat, man. So essentially what I wanted to talk about was why Bitcoin Unlimited might be doing this if they are the ones behind this attack. What do they have to benefit from this?
Wow, dude, I'm not going to lie, you just blew my mind, dude. You just entered the world of crypto conspiracy theory, and that's just crazy.
Does anybody else have any input on this?
See, this is the perspective only an insider can really give you. It really shows you that nothing is as it appears on the surface.
That's right.
All right.
Someone's really masterminding this, eh? That's crazy.
So here's what I think. I think Roger Ver is behind these attacks. And here's why I say this. Roger Ver is a huge... No, I'm not on... Well, I used to be a Twitch streamer, but I'm not on Twitch, man. Right now I'm on YouTube. But here's why I say this. Roger Ver is a huge fan of Bitcoin Unlimited. I think he actually put together this ideology of creating blocks that can evolve and grow in size. And the reason is, if you look at this attack that's been ongoing for the past 18 months, who does this actually help in the long run? Well, it helps the miners, because by doing so, the miners get paid higher transaction fees. And Roger Ver, you know, he hasn't come out and publicly said this, but I believe that Roger Ver has a huge mining operation in China. And if I'm correct about this, then he tends to profit off of this. So the only way that he could actually create this spam attack, which costs a lot of money, by the way, a lot of money. We are talking about millions of dollars to be able to spam the network like this. But in order for him to actually profit off of spending this much money sending these microtransactions, he has to be able to profit somehow. Where is that coming from? And I think that's coming from the high transaction fees that people are having to pay due to this spam attack. And also, by doing this, it pushes his agenda of ushering in Bitcoin Unlimited's ideology, because I kind of mentioned this before. Segregated witness can't fix the issue of a spam attack, because all it's doing is removing signatures in transaction blocks. It's not actually growing the size of the block. So that is what I believe is going on. I could be incredibly wrong, and I could be an asshole for saying this, but I believe that's what's going on right now with the network. A lot of people seem to think that if this spam attack weren't going on, transactions would be fluid, that they would be going through instantaneously like they were before. And I don't know if I tend to agree with that, because we are seeing a lot of people flood into the market, a lot of new users, so I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. The block size is still really small, and each block does take 10 minutes. So they are slow blocks. There are a lot of transactions ongoing. So it's really hard to say what would happen if this spam attack were not going on. But what do you guys think of this idea that I'm presenting? Anyone, feel free to discuss how you're feeling about it. If you think I'm completely full of shit, you can call me out on that as well. I really don't mind.
I think you outlined like a really genius plot here, where he's got two hands washing one another in this elaborate scheme where he's making money and achieving his long-term goal of pushing obviously this pork onto the community.
Okay. Anybody else? Now, I realize how controversial this topic is, believe me, and I wouldn't say these things if I didn't have information to back it up. So I encourage everybody that's listening to do some research on this topic. Would a centralized organization seek to destabilize Bitcoin? Banks and governments? Absolutely. Well, I don't know if they would necessarily want to destabilize it or necessarily control it, because that's what I would, lean more towards, like them wanting to control the entity, not necessarily destabilize it. Because if they could control it, then they wouldn't have to worry about destabilization. They could just, profit off of it. But I don't think that's what's going on right now. 18 plus month attack is a lot of effort. Absolutely it is. But if you have a lot to profit off of something like this, then 18 months really isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, I mean, if he has millions of dollars invested in server farms and, millions of dollars a day in possible turnover, like what's a few million for the cause, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about as far as Bitcoin's future goes is this user-activated soft fork BIP 148 and SegWit 2x. So a lot of people have been talking about this, and a lot of people are a little bit misinformed when it comes to these things. So I wanted to clear up a little bit of the air and talk about why these things are important and how it affects you, essentially. Because if a hard fork occurs and two chains are created off of this, then it is definitely going to affect anybody on the Bitcoin network. And that's essentially what is causing this market downtrend. This bearish market has nothing to do with anything but the fear of Bitcoin breaking into two separate chains. I need everybody that's watching to understand that. Everybody's saying like these different theories of why we're in a market downtrend. Oh, people were just taking profits. Oh, it's the summer. The summer is always low on market cap. Well, those might have small effects on the market, but this is a huge market downtrend, and I need people to understand that this has everything to do with Papa Bitcoin. There are a lot of really smart people, much smarter than I am, that see these things and can tell that there is a lot of instability with Bitcoin right now, and they're leaving the market until Bitcoin figures its shit out. So let's talk about the user-activated soft fork versus SegWit 2x. So in its name, user-activated soft fork, that is going to be the people like you and I that create the new protocol. Whereas SegWit 2x is going to be signaled by the miners. So there is a huge gap, or there is a huge, I guess, debate, I guess we'll call it, kind of similar to Bitcoin Unlimited versus Bitcoin Core. The difference is SegWit 2x being signaled by the miners, a lot of users feel like SegWit 2x is some sort of scheme that will, make Bitcoin more profitable for the miners and a lot more expensive for the users. And Bitcoin miners think that the user-activated soft fork is a scheme for the users to cheapskate their way through and not have to pay the miners as much in fees. And I think that there's a little bit of truth to both sides of the argument here. I think that the users definitely want cheaper transaction fees, because let's just be honest, it's expensive as fuck right now to send a transaction on the Bitcoin network. And it's slow and it's clunky. And the miners want to make sure that they keep getting paid the amount that they've been earning already. They don't want to take profit losses, and that's understandable. If you're somebody that's invested in mining hardware and you're making a current income and you're expecting to continue earning that income and maybe buying more to upgrade your infrastructure, you're not going to want to take profit losses. So you're going to want to push for SegWit 2x, whereas people like you and I want to push for the user-activated soft fork. It's the summer and a big correction. Okay. I mean, you can believe whatever you want, but I'm telling you why the market is in a downtrend. Like, this is essentially the debate that is ongoing right now. So let's talk about it, guys. What are y'all's thoughts? And do you guys actually know what's going on in this debate? Or are you guys just kind of rolling with the punches?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's really doing such a technical analysis of what's going on. So what it seems to boil down to, is it like a top-down update, or is it going to be a bottom-up update? You know, which way is it going to fall?
What do you mean? Can you explain what you're asking?
No, in terms of who, the miners want to do the SegWit, they want to do it their way, 2x, which seems like they're holding the bags and they're the biggest stakeholders in Bitcoin. It's kind of, to me, they're instituting the update top down, right? So they're the boss and they're pushing their will out onto the community. Whereas the other way is kind of the bottom up, right? Does the community, the bottom, decide, if they're going to fork that way?
Yeah.
I mean, who's right? And this also brings up just the bigger, philosophical question of cryptos. Like, who decides, and how do you balance, the interests of the miners versus the interests of the users?
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what I wanted to kind of lead this conversation into. It's important to know what's going to happen and why. So there are a lot of miners, a very large portion, I think it's around 70% of the miners are currently signaling for SegWit 2x. And a lot of people seem to think that these miners are signaling for it, but are not actually going to follow through with it, because they think that the user-activated soft fork isn't going to get... They think that the user-activated soft fork is not going to get enough traction to be able to actually be implemented on the blockchain. So they think that if they signal and say that they're going to issue SegWit 2x, then they won't have to worry about the user-activated soft fork. But whenever the user-activated soft fork doesn't occur, then they can just pull out of actually signaling for SegWit. And a lot of people are actually really worried about that, so more people are actually latching on to the idea of the user-activated soft fork. But the thing is if not enough people gain traction with the user-activated soft fork, and then SegWit 2x isn't implemented, the chain will split. And it's very important to know that, because if it splits, all hell is going to break loose, especially with investors that are not tech savvy enough to be able to access both sides of the chain. So if there is a split, guys, and you are already holding Bitcoin before the split, you will be able to access tokens on both sides of the chain.
How does this apply to guys with coins in the marketplace, where the exchanges are holding my coins?
That's actually an incredible question. Thank you for asking that, because I was going to forget about that if you hadn't asked that, so thanks for asking. GDAX has already said that if the implementation of the user-activated soft fork does go through, they're going to be shutting down all transactions of Bitcoin altogether. GDAX is a huge exchange, like one of the largest in the world. So that in itself is already scary. If you can't pull your funds off of the exchange, how are you going to be able to access both sides of the fork? So just keep that in mind. And I think that other exchanges are going to follow suit with GDAX, seeing that it is such a large exchange. they might follow the leader and say, hey, we're going to do that too. And what's scary about that is that if they have both sides of the fork, then they can access whichever side they think is going to be more profitable and just give you the one that is less profitable, I guess. Now, is that necessarily fair? No. But if you're leaving your coins on the exchange, you're basically saying that those coins are no longer yours to begin with. That's the way I see it, at least. You know, a lot of people would be pissed off if that actually happened to them. And of course, I would probably be a little butthurt about that myself. But at the end of the day, after you get burned by 2 separate exchanges over the course of 4 years, you kind of see a trend that, hey, maybe I should be a little bit more responsible with my own money. So that's why I'm telling you guys this. I'm telling you guys these things so that you can prepare for this potential Bitcoin fork. All right, let's take a look at chat. Red 5 Golf Gunny, dude, if you post that again, man, you're gonna get banned in chat. Please stop posting your Bitcoin address. That's pissing me off, man. And this is exactly why people are pulling money out of Bitcoin, so they can put it back in when all the chaos is gone. The exchanges also give you both. No, dude, that is not true at all. The exchanges do not have to give you both. It is their choice. It is their choice, because once you give an exchange your tokens, you are stating that they are no longer yours, and if they are lost, the exchanges are not responsible for the loss. It's happened dozens of times. Please do not be ignorant.
You know, it's crazy that no one's talking about this, and that there's not even announcements posted when you log in saying, hey, here comes the Bitcoin fork, just so you know, this is how our official policy is, yada, yada, yada. I can't believe that there's just like almost a blackout on this information.
But there's a thing called customer service. Bro, you are literally making me lol right now with your comments. Please do not be this ignorant. If you honestly believe that an exchange's customer service is going to give a fuck about you, then you are kindly mistaken. Like, I'm telling you this from personal experience, bro. I have been burned by exchanges in the past. I can give you 2 that I have lost so much money on. Mt. Gox and Cripsy have both burned the fuck out of me. Take your head out of your ass? Bro, oh my god. You must have just gotten into cryptocurrencies last week. You are triggering me right now.
Oh, dude, it's all good, it's all good.
So all exchanges will burn you? Absolutely. When it comes to them or you, who do you think they're going to worry about, themselves or you? Been in it longer than you. Okay. Then you're just completely ignorant if that's how you feel. I think he's trolling. I think he's trolling too. This fork was known about for longer than 2 weeks, and no, it isn't the reason for this selling in Bitcoin. Joe, yes it is, man. And let me explain why. It's been known by a select few people that are actually incredibly invested with their time in studying these things. But news agencies have not been reporting on this up until very recently. And if you look back, the last time they tried to implement SegWit, only 30% of the support actually came and showed up. This time, they're basically stating, all right, miners, if you don't implement this change, the users will. I knew tonight was going to be very, very controversial, and that's why I wanted to talk about these things, because you have people like Died in my chat, or however the fuck you say his name, like, that just have these ideas in their head that everything is going to be okay. But I'm trying to get you guys to understand that you need to be responsible. You need to be responsible with your money, and you need to not trust anybody else. I'm just lying, apparently. I'm just lying, guys. I'm lying to you.
Nah, man, solid advice. I think people need to be responsible and realize that, you know, you can't, especially if you're new to the game, you have to understand tokens, once you put them on exchange, are not yours. And if you want to button down the hatches and go for cover, you might want to consider, obviously, taking your keys completely private for this upcoming fork.
Exactly. Like, but
so why leave it up to chance, right? You know, maybe exchange will give it to you, maybe they won't, but why leave it to chance? Maybe the best bet is to, you know, take the Bitcoin into your possession and ride it out.
Exactly. Why would you want to leave your money in Bitcoin on an exchange if there is a potential hard fork that could cause two separate chains?
Dave, one thing that you got to understand is it's risk versus reward. There's literally no reward for keeping your stuff on an exchange, but there's great risk. There's no risk by taking it private, and no reward either, except that you don't have the downside. It's like really simple economics here. Like, why risk it? There is no need to.
Exactly. And that's my entire point here, guys. Like, because you have it tied up in investments. If you have it tied up in investments, then you don't have to worry about that. If you have it in other cryptocurrencies, then you don't have to worry about Bitcoin, because you have it tied up in other cryptocurrencies. That's completely, like, off topic, bro.
Yeah, I think that just kind of shows that he doesn't understand.
Yeah,
that's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, that... Died, I feel like you're trolling me, man. I feel like you're trolling me really hardcore right now.
So I have a question about the split and when it was roughly known by, let's call it the mass crypto public. Like, the idea of it, and then I know there's multiple versions like we've talked about here, but like, approximately what's the time frame that this started being like an undercurrent of this is probably going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and so on and so forth? Does anyone know that timeline?
Yeah, so, like I said, it was kind of about 2 years ago, people really started to notice that there needed to be some, and it can actually go all the way back to the beginning. If you read some of the forums where Satoshi Nakamoto was talking to other developers, it was actually discussed in the very beginning that there might be some scalability issues with his creation. And so it can actually be traced all the way back to then. But really about 2 years ago, people started talking big time about scalability and microtransactions and things of that sort. And that's kind of around the time Bitcoin Unlimited and Bitcoin Core started their debate. But
okay.
But
go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
But this SegWit that they tried to implement was, I think, around January of this year, whenever that 30% got together and signaled for segregated witness, which wasn't nearly enough. In fact, there was an old BIP that basically changed the architecture of Bitcoin, stating that 95% of the miners had to signal for a BIP for it to be implemented on the blockchain. Does that make sense, KJ?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Because it kind of went to my next question was, you know, if your feeling is that the entire downturn in the market is due to the uncertainty there, what explains the uptrend that was, I'll arguably call, a pretty big bubble there from about May 20th until, well, I guess I don't remember when it exactly started the downturn, but let's say mid-June, late June.
So this user-activated soft fork idea is relatively new, like within the past couple of months, and I know developers have been working on it for a while, but it hasn't been divulged to the rest of the users. And I think a lot of people have been FOMO'd into the market over the past few months. Like, if you take a look at the media, people weren't really talking about Bitcoin or Ethereum, especially Ethereum. Let's talk about Ethereum for a second as far as that goes. Nobody in the news, in the media, was talking about Ethereum. And within the past, 4 or 5 months, we've started seeing a lot of coverage on Ethereum. And I'm talking about really big networks like CNBC and MSNBC and CNN have been talking about Ethereum, and that has caused a huge influx. And also people have been scooping up mining machines, mining hardware to mine Ethereum, which has also caused a huge skyrocket in the market. And then on top of all of that, we've had all of these ICOs that have just been blowing up in the market that have been getting venture capitalists into the scene. These venture capitalists see these ICOs as kind of similar to the .com age, whenever you started seeing all of these companies, barely taking off and then growing into multi-billion-dollar corporations. Like, look at Amazon today. That was one of those companies that was a startup back in the 90s during the .com age. So I think a lot of venture capitalists have entered the market. Not as many as we'll see over the next few years, but I think all of those things that I just discussed kind of tie into this idea that we've seen a really, really bullish market over the past few months. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because my feeling is that, yes, the general Bitcoin's instability or unknown factor is a big part of this downturn. But I think that we just had a really big run-up, like what sometimes happens in markets. And that run-up eventually runs out of steam just naturally, and then kind of just peters out, and you start your downswing because you got to kind of correct back to the market mean, like back to the previous trend lines, basically. Especially when there's no big event that caused this slow downturn, relatively slow in crypto world, but that's just my opinion. I just don't think it's 100% Bitcoin uncertainty. I think that's a huge part of it, but I just think it was a natural kind of market rise, and then peters out and returns to like a normal trend.
Of course.
From before the bull run. Yeah.
There is never 100% of a reason behind anything happening in the crypto space, but this user-activated soft fork is by far the largest reason for it. There were definitely people that took profits. We saw that guy sell 40,000 Ether back in June. That in itself shows you that people were taking profits. But again, going back to it, the main reason for this bearish market is the uncertainty with Bitcoin, because Papa Bitcoin is going to, determine the rest of the market while it's still the alpha $40 billion market cap as opposed to $80 billion total market cap altogether is a huge deal. Whenever you make up half of the market cap altogether, you have a huge say in how a market sways. So, yes, you can say these other things have a slight, action in the market, but at the end of the day, this boils mainly down to the uncertainty behind Bitcoin.
Yeah, honestly, I was probably just nitpicking your words from before a little bit too much. Like, my impression from the way you worded it before just was that you really felt like that was the only reason for the downturn. And I just wanted to point out that I kind of felt a little bit differently. I agree with you mostly, but just wanted to add a little, little nuance to it.
Yeah, no. There are, dozens of reasons why things happen in the crypto space, but there are small reasons and then there are large reasons, and the largest reason here is the fact that Bitcoin needs to figure out its scalability issues.
So what do you think started the run up back in April, was when this whole bull took off?
I think the ICOs had a lot to do with that. If you look, Ethereum has actually been playing a lot larger role in the rest of the... Yo, Two-Trop, your mic is queuing, man.
I got it.
Cool. So I think ICOs had a large part in the run-up. People were buying boatloads of Ethereum, and if you look at it, whenever it rose all the way to $400, you can see that a lot of people were buying, large-scale Ethereum stakes so that they could put it into these ICOs, and I think that has a lot to do with why people believed the flippening was going to occur, because these people that were buying into Ethereum to take part in these ICOs. But as you can see, the ICOs that really made up a large portion of the market are kind of over now. Like Tezos, Bancor, 10x, like these really, really large ICOs are kind of over. EOS is still ongoing, and we've been seeing a lot of money pumped into that daily, but I think that is a lot of ETH holders that have been holding on to Ethereum for a while. Like myself personally, I've been holding on to Ethereum for a long time, and I've been pumping some of my Ethereum into the EOS ICO. But yeah, like that, I think that would explain why we saw such a huge rise in the market.
Hey, Sam was asking in the chat, how much of the market cap are serious investors? Like, know all the details. I feel like people like me have no clue what's going on.
Sam, I will say, if you want to talk about just like a person, knowing what's going on and there's a serious investor, I would say the percentage is tiny. But if you want to talk about percentage of holdings of total, like Ethereum and total Bitcoin, I bet you that those people make up a majority just because of the way that crypto is disseminated. I think there's a lot of really big holders that are the ones that really have a clue of what's really going on. So per person, probably pretty small, but the amount of holdings, like, I bet it's pretty concentrated.
Yeah, I don't think, like, whenever you say serious investors, do you mean venture capitalists? Is that what you're saying? Informed investors. That's still a very loose term. Like, you're gonna have to You're gonna have to be a little bit more specific for me, man.
Are you talking about like large scale financial institutions, like that level, like the Vanguard, Goldman Sachs, Charles Schwab, like that type of thing? Or are you talking more even on an individual level, like just very experienced traditional stock, traders who have gotten into cryptocurrency on like a individual level?
Yeah.
Because I think that there's both. I think that there's both of those. I think there's lots of money to be made here, because if you talk to most traders, the one thing they love is volatility in a market. Like institutions like it, because you can make money both ways, down and up. They just need volatility to make money.
Yeah, so I was talking mostly about like the people that are investing for the fear of missing out. They have like no idea what's going on.
Yeah, it's like everybody who, didn't see the tea leaves last week and stayed in the market and was perplexed why there was a bloodbath come Monday.
It's really hard to say, man. There's really no way to tell where all of this money is coming from that we saw in the market. But I will say this. Died, or however the fuck you say his name in chat, did bring up a good point. South Korea and Japan have made up a very large portion of this money that we've seen come into the marketplace. And it's because Japan basically came out and said that we're no longer going to tax cryptocurrencies. And that played a huge part in the rise as well. And I think a lot of investors in Japan have gotten into Bitcoin and Ethereum because of this regulation that was put in place back in April. So in May, we saw a huge influx of Japanese investors that made up the majority of sales, actually, in May of Bitcoin itself. But does that kind of answer your question, Sam?
A little bit. I mean, I guess the main point of my question is like, how much percent of the Bitcoin holdings are people kind of like me that don't even really know about this fork that's happening, that might be happening soon?
It's hard to say, man, because like how many of you in this chat knew about all of the things that I was talking about earlier as far as Bitcoin Unlimited versus Bitcoin Core and the user activated soft fork versus SegWit 2x?
Nobody, man. Everybody's asleep.
I mean, like I didn't know at all before today.
Well, Sam, I'll say this. I don't think you're at all alone. Like, for sure you're not alone. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are just those types that bought at the beginning of the year and are those types of people who are long-term investing. They're like, I see a future in Bitcoin. I bought at the end of the year or beginning of the year when it was lower. They've just ridden this whole thing. They probably don't even check it very often. And so they're not going to know about this fork if they haven't been following the news. But I just think that I don't think you're alone at all. Or we're alone, now that you're no longer in that camp.
Yeah, like the thing is most people that are invested in cryptocurrencies don't even understand how a blockchain works. And so my kind of idea behind that and my whole reason for doing these shows and making these videos is to inform people on what blockchain technology is and how it's getting upgraded over time with these separate blockchains. So I'm trying to inform people with these things so that you can actually understand on a fundamental level what is driving this. So I mean, hopefully with these talks that we're having, you can get a little bit more informed and understand what's going on behind the scenes. That way you can know when the market is going to upturn and when it's going to downturn. Because let's be honest, in the crypto space, there's been nothing but volatility. And it's made a lot of people a lot of money very quickly, and it's made people lose a lot of money very quickly. So you need to be very careful with your investments, and, you know, by being informed, you're already ahead of the curve.
That's true.
All right, guys, keep this conversation going on. I'm going to go use the restroom real quick. I'll be right back.
All right, so we're looking at a big Bitcoin correction coming up, and the question is, let's hope that everything sorts itself out. Bitcoin is still a solid product in a couple weeks. Who's going to buy back into Bitcoin, and what will be your basement? Who do you guys think? 1,800? 1,600? You got any guesses how low Bitcoin's going to go in the next couple months?
I mean, I'll be honest, I've been following the little posts that Goldman Sachs has done about the crypto space, and they're definitely calling for 1,800 Bitcoin before this turns around. And I just think that that's a completely valid guess, you know, or educated guess, however you want to view that.
Yeah, definitely 1,800. I'm seeing at least 1,800, maybe as low as 1,600.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
But hey, for all the latecomers, might be a perfect time to get back in.
Yeah, and sorry, I was just going to add one thing quick. And that's assuming that Bitcoin, after that split, still is stable. What happens if it really does fragment all over the place? Then who knows what the lower end of the price on the 2 or 3 Bitcoins that exist then will be.
Yeah, I see a lot of optimism here. 1,500. I think someone said 1,200 earlier. So, wow. I guess everybody's got quite a bearish outlook.
All right. What are we talking about?
I was just polling everybody what their thoughts are on what could be. Let's assume that Bitcoin, the problem works itself out. We got a stable currency in the next few weeks or months. How low is it going to go was the question. People were just polling people. We got things as low as 1,200, 1,600, 1,800. I think is the minimum conservative guess as to how low we're going to go.
I think it really all depends on, what happens with this user-activated soft fork. Like, if it splits the chain into 2 separate forks, then we could... I mean, think about this on an economic level. If you have something that is valued at a current price and it splits in 2, what's going to happen to that price? The value is going to be split between 2 separate forks, right?
Yep.
Okay, so immediately after that fork, we're going to see a huge decline in the value of both of them, but one of them is eventually going to take over, right?
That's right.
So let's just take Ethereum, for instance. Look at what Ethereum did over the past year. Before the hard fork from the DAO hack, Ethereum was at around $12, I think, is what it was. And then the DAO hack occurred, and both Ethereum and Ethereum Classic dropped below $1. And you could pick it up for really fucking cheap. But look at what eventually happened. Look at Ethereum. We've seen a huge increase in the price of Ethereum over the past year. And Ethereum Classic has actually done really well in its own right. And I think Ethereum Classic has a lot of room to grow. But I don't think that would happen with Bitcoin at all. I think Bitcoin, whatever is called Bitcoin after the hard fork, because one of them can't be called Bitcoin, only one of them can actually be called Bitcoin afterwards. Let's just be real. I think that one is going to do extremely well. and the other one is just going to teeter off into non-existence with Bitcoin.
What do you think about the dominance of both coins after the split?
Can you say that again?
The dominance of both coins.
Like, are you saying, after a split, let's say this, are you saying, does Clayford expect it to both be dominant, the 1 and 2 spots in the market?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that'll happen because, like, Ethereum Classic has a completely different market cap than Ethereum based on its price, right? Both of them have around the same amount of circulating supply, but Ethereum Classic is around $17, whereas Ethereum is around $200. So one of them is going to be accepted everywhere and the other is not. So the one that is not accepted by the masses is going to teeter off, and the market cap is going to be extremely lower than the original Bitcoin. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay. If Bitcoin is unstable, can Litecoin take its place? Here's the thing about Litecoin. I actually have a lot of faith in Litecoin. I think that it's a great project. I think, and I've said this many times, I think Charlie Lee is a fantastic developer. But if Bitcoin can implement scalability like Litecoin currently has, it's going to be very difficult for Litecoin to find its path. Because if you have Bitcoin, which has the largest infrastructure in the world for any cryptocurrency, and you can send microtransactions on it, what would we need Litecoin for? Because Litecoin doesn't really solve anything that Bitcoin couldn't at that point, right? Does that make sense, Sam? And I hate to say that because I do really appreciate Litecoin and what they're doing. Litecoin basically is a test network for Bitcoin. And so in that aspect, I think Litecoin will always have a place. But whether it will be as profitable as it is right now, that's really the question to be asked. What other questions do you guys have about this? I'm really intrigued by some of these questions that you guys are asking. These are really, really good questions.
I don't know, when you got, like you say, Daddy Bear Bitcoin underpinning the whole market, any kind of instability or uncertainty surrounding that is going to blow up the rest of the market. But, this might be a necessary change, right? If Bitcoin's going to have its crisis and go away, I prefer that to be sooner than later, and we can get on with its replacement. But I guess there's so much infrastructure and, stake already in Bitcoin, maybe that my idea of it going away so easily is unrealistic.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but I would really appreciate it if Bitcoin would go away. I know that it's not going to happen. Like I said, there's too much infrastructure built around it. But if Bitcoin went away, it would allow us to create bigger and better things. There are already so many blockchains out there that solve so many problems that Bitcoin just cannot. It's essentially being used as a store of value right now, and that is all it currently can be used for.
Dashcoin is said to be a Bitcoin competitor, up and coming.
Dashcoin has been around forever, man, and I don't think it's a competitor to Bitcoin at all. It doesn't solve anything either. I take that back. I do like what they're doing with the tests that they're running on allowing side chains to run close to fiat. That is really awesome, what they're trying to accomplish there. But their dark send is not that great. And there are already other cryptocurrencies that are specifically used for anonymity. I feel like Coinbase jump-started the rise of Ethereum and Litecoin. So, let's address that, guys. Anytime a large exchange adds a cryptocurrency to their exchange, that cryptocurrency does extremely well short-term. Let's take a look at Ethereum Classic over the past few days. 3 of the largest Chinese exchanges just added Ethereum Classic. And look at how well Ethereum Classic is doing right now. It's doing really well in the downtrend market. But it's because it just got added to that, so people in China are scooping that up at a quick rate. But is that going to last? No, it's not. I have my own opinions on Ethereum Classic and how well it's going to do in the long run, but short term, right now, it's probably just going to stay around the same price that it is. It's not going to go up anymore. It's already been added, and those people that wanted to get in on it have already done so. What other questions do you guys have?
Do you think Coinbase, do you think it's going to add more coins? That's a question from Sam.
Oh, okay. I mean, it really just depends. If they find it profitable, they will. But they always post on their forums before they actually list something. They talk about the cryptocurrency before they actually list it. It's kind of funny how they do that. No way ETC stays where it is if you look at the chart. Clearly a bubble. Joe, I'm starting to believe that you don't know what you're talking about. So let the big boys talk, man. I think that ETC has huge potential to do great things. It's about to have a lot of ICOs listed on it. And if you take a look at Ethereum, Ethereum has done extremely well because of ICOs. You know, it never would have hit that $400 mark without the ICOs that have been implemented on its blockchain. Ethereum Classic is about to have the same exact thing. I don't like to just look at charts when it comes to cryptocurrencies, because cryptocurrency markets are not at all like stock markets. You know, technical analysts will look at charts all day and say one thing, but when it comes to cryptocurrencies, you really have to know your fundamentals to see how well the project is going to do. And right now, with Ethereum Classic having 2 competing development teams, it really puts a spin on it. You know, Ethereum only has the Ethereum Foundation that adds development to its blockchain. But if you have competition between 2 development teams, where does that put you? That puts you ahead of the curve. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm at STEEM, been spot on about Bitcoin. Just because you've been spot on about Bitcoin doesn't mean you're going to be spot on about every single cryptocurrency, man. You are the only one who is clueless. Apparently I'm clueless, guys.
Tough break.
I am absolutely clueless, according to Died and Joe here.
Well, he's saying that the price is driven by sentiment, but the sentiment can turn in Ethereum Classic's favor any minute, especially if Ethereum goes by the wayside.
Well, that's not going to happen. Ethereum is never going to go by the wayside because of the Ethereum Enterprise Alliance. But just because we have Ethereum doesn't mean that Ethereum Classic doesn't have a place in the market as well. Right now, the market cap is $80 billion. Where could that be in 3 years from now, in 5 years from now? I think that it could eventually make up 10% of the world's domestic product. And if that's the case, both could easily have a place in the market.
He suggested that every coin is going to follow Bitcoin and the market. So do you think anything's going to trade independently, or do you think everyone's going to follow the big daddy?
For short term, everything is going to follow Bitcoin. I mean, we're seeing that right now. But really interesting, what's really been interesting over the past few months has been the fact that Ethereum has also been causing ripples in the market. You know, when that GDAX crash sale happened a few weeks ago with Ethereum, that 40,000 that got sold, what happened to the rest of the market? The rest of the market went red with Ethereum. So it's not just Bitcoin. I mean, I think short term, yes, whenever Bitcoin bleeds, everything else is going to bleed tenfold. But I think we're starting to see a new market emerge where things like Ethereum can cause the market to bleed just as well. The host brought the antagonistic tone to the show. No, man. You came and poked the bear in my chat, bro. You intentionally triggered me. I'm actually a very, very nice guy.
It's all good, guys, but nobody sees a potential for like there being a flight away from Bitcoin at some point in the future, even if it's 3 or 4 years from now, flight to some other currency.
I do, but we've talked about my opinions on that before.
Yeah. Let's discuss that.
Well, I think that there will be, because I'm of the strong opinion that especially in software development, which is what cryptocurrency is, it's pretty darn rare for the first on the block to be the one that's the dominant force after a decade, 2 decades, whatever. Because it feels like in software development, it's a lot easier to build something better from the ground up than to patch in and change old code, like fundamentally. You know, like you kind of get locked into something that's working, and it's a lot harder to totally change the direction of that. And that's where I think that someone sometime will create something that's better, that does more, or that maybe facilitates. I was talking to Ethan about this the other night, but could someone create something that facilitates a lot of the banking functions that exist today in a better way, and then banks adopt it? You know, and that would drive mass like momentum to that over Bitcoin.
Yeah, but we don't want that. At least
I'm just saying, but it could be decentralized in the way that like all the banks in the world use it, or the main node holders or something. I'm not saying you. Sorry, go ahead.
Anything that's touched by a bank is centralized. There's no way it could ever be decentralized. And that totally goes against the fundamentals of why we are using cryptocurrencies. So while I agree with some of what you're saying, I don't want banks touching my money, because anytime you put your money trusted in a bank or a third-party entity, you're no longer able to access your own funds. So that's my take on that.
I was just using that as an example, to be honest. I don't really believe that will necessarily happen. I just was conjuring up an idea of what could cause people to, move away from Bitcoin. If you can very easily, in that hypothetical scenario where there's a bank-based coin, walk into your bank and deposit or withdraw that cryptocurrency for fiat right there in person, and then walk over and get a meal with the either the fiat currency or the cryptocurrency, and the more that would be like the mainstream thing. Could be.
Yeah. I completely agree with GK Town here. We need to be able to make our money work for us, not work for others. That totally goes with what I've been trying to accomplish on a personal scale. Anybody that's read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's exactly what the author is talking about, having your money work for you. And I think that's what most people in the cryptocurrency space are trying to achieve. And I don't know, attaching these large corporations or banks to cryptocurrencies obviously will have a bittersweet, it will be very bittersweet if that occurs, because obviously the prices of cryptocurrencies will go up and it'll make a lot of people rich, but at what cost? What we're trying to accomplish in the crypto space is a decentralized network that allows people to transact with one another and not have to worry about a third party. You can't do that in fiat. The author didn't need crypto. See, you're separating my arguments, man, but you can definitely do it with whatever currency you're using. I'm just tying this to cryptocurrencies specifically. You say that I'm the one being antagonistic, but I haven't been responding to you for a while, so I don't know why you're still being a pessimist.
Do you think that the new Bitcoin split will counteract the max supply? Is it because Bitcoin has a max supply, and they're gonna bring out the new one so that there's more coins?
I'm sorry, man. I'm having a really hard time understanding you.
There's a max supply of Bitcoin. So when the split comes, do you think that one of the reasons they're doing it is to increase the supply of the Bitcoins?
Did you get that, Clayford?
Are you asking, are they intentionally creating a fork?
He's saying, are they intentionally creating a fork because there's only 21 million? 21 million Bitcoins going to be made, and they're creating a fork so that now there's 42 million Bitcoins out there.
No, I don't think that's it at all, because let's be honest, if their agenda was to create and generate more coins, they would just implement that in the source code, but nobody will ever buy into that, because the whole idea of Bitcoin being valuable and being used as a store of value is the fact that only 21 million coins will ever be minted.
They've mined what, like 16 million to date?
Yep. 16.4.
So if they forked now, we could say that there'd be 16 million of the classic coin and 16 million of the new coin. No, wait. There'd be 16 million of the original coin, and then going forward, there'd be an additional 5 million coins you can mine in either classic or in the new format. So there would be a duplicate. Everything going forward, so another 5 million coins worth of mining would be the ones that are now on 2 different chains.
I'm sorry, I'm reading chat right now. People are having a discussion outside of what we're talking about now.
It's all good. It's all good.
Exactly. The cap on Bitcoin is what gives it its value. So generating more coins would completely defeat the purpose of its set cap. The whole idea that Satoshi brought to the table was, we want this to defeat inflation. Like, he saw the housing market collapse of 2007, and that's what totally brought up this idea of defeating inflation. What anyone is willing to spend at any given time gives it value. Okay, but why are people willing to spend as much as they are on Bitcoin, man? You're taking a look at only technical aspects. You need to encompass fundamental and technical aspects to understand this market, bro, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. You can't just look at one side of the aisle. Alright, so we've been discussing Bitcoin for almost an hour and 15 minutes. Let's move on to our next topic, guys. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about was AlphaBay. And for those of you that don't know what AlphaBay is, if you know what Silk Road is, it's basically the black market of the internet. It allows you to buy and sell pretty much anything on the marketplace. There is no restrictions to anything that you sell. It's basically capitalism at its finest, because anybody can go buy, sell, and trade whatever it is that they want on this marketplace. But for those of you that didn't know, it was actually shut down on July 4th, and the creator of AlphaBay was actually captured and put in jail in Thailand. The Canadian authorities actually shut down the server in Quebec. But for some reason, the United States thought that they had the right to try him. So they were going to try and bring him to the United States to be tried for his crimes. And I say crimes, but for anybody that knows about what happened with Silk Road and the creator of Silk Road, it's been a very sticky topic. I told you guys that tonight was going to be a very controversial night. You know, all of these things that we're talking about have huge controversy behind them. Now tonight, talking about AlphaBay, whether you believe, you know, what these people are doing is completely illegal and immoral, that's totally on you. But the way I see it is, it's a place for capitalism, and I am very much a capitalist at heart, so I think that this place was a very good place. You know, people that have to pay an extremely high amount of money for an inhaler can go on AlphaBay and buy an inhaler so that they don't have to worry about their asthma. You know, in places that have huge regulation on pharmaceuticals, this was the place that they would go to make sure that they didn't have to pay as high of a fee for things like that. Not many people actually realize that. They only associate this with, you know, drugs like illegal drugs, like cocaine and crystal meth and things like that, and weapons. They only associate these things with that. But it actually is a marketplace for a lot more than that. People would also not have to pay import taxes. A lot of people think that the taxes that the government puts on them are illegal at their start. So, they used avenues like this to get around that. And again, whatever your belief is on this topic, I'm giving you, the side of this. Anyways, what does this play on the cryptocurrency scene? So for those of you that don't know, AlphaBay and Silk Road have been using cryptocurrencies to stay out of fiat so that they aren't tracked. However, governments have been cracking down on the ledgers behind cryptocurrencies, and they've been able to find a lot of IP addresses that have been using cryptocurrencies to buy things on these markets. And that's how they were able to track down the founder of AlphaBay. So I'd just like to start a discussion on everybody's sentiment towards this and how you guys feel about, the U.S. claiming that they deserve the right to try this person who was never a U.S. citizen to begin with. He was a Canadian citizen. So let's just talk about that. What's y'all's opinions?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how the law works, but if he committed crimes or cybercrime in the United States, I'm guessing they have a right to extradite you from another country for that?
Say that again?
If he committed cybercrimes that took place within the border of the United States, maybe they have a right to chase this guy internationally?
Right, but AlphaBay was used worldwide. It wasn't, something that was specifically used in the United States. So, again, I would feel like the Canadian government would be the ones that would extradite him here.
Seeing something here about it being an exit scam?
Yeah, so, I also wanted to mention that. So a lot of people that had money tied up in AlphaBay initially thought that the creator of AlphaBay was just taking everybody's money and fleeing with their money, because for those of you that don't know, $600,000 to $800,000 US dollars was being spent on AlphaBay every single day. Like, every single day. There was that much money being poured into this market. So a lot of people thought that the creator was taking everybody's money and fleeing with their money. Little did they know that he actually got arrested and the site was just being shut down by the government.
What currencies were used on this on AlphaBay?
It's literally a marketplace for anything. People could use any currency that they wanted, as long as the seller approved the buyer's currency. So I think a lot of people were starting to use cryptocurrencies like Monero and Zcash.
Was AlphaBay dark web only, or is it on the normal internet?
It was only on the dark web, man. You can't access a website like this on the web. So, for those of you that don't know how to actually access these websites, you would actually have to know the IP address of the specific website that you're trying to access, because these things don't exist on the regular web as we know it. You can't just type in a URL. Does anybody else have anything to add to this conversation?
So the guy dies under suspicious circumstances while in custody waiting extradition, is that it?
Yeah. So the creator of AlphaBay actually supposedly hanged himself while he was in custody in Thailand just a couple of days ago. And I find that really, really interesting. So I could see why somebody of his status would want to do that, because look at Ross Ulbricht, the creator of Silk Road. He's serving a life sentence right now.
2 consecutive life sentences, actually.
Exactly. Thank you, KJ. So I could understand why somebody would want to do that, but at the same time, it also is really suspicious because there hasn't been much media on the fact that he was ever even captured. You would think that something like that would be, mass media, because with Ross Ulbricht, that was very, very populated on the media.
We know, what kind of history do we know about this guy? Does he relate in any way to Silk Road? Was he involved in Silk Road? What kind of ties does he have?
I don't know. He's actually a very young man. He's 26 years old, and so he might not have ever had a hand in Silk Road at all, because Silk Road might have been, a little bit before his time. He would have still been in college at that time. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I guess we need to do a little more research on the guy, where he's from, how he got into this. I think I'm curious because I'm assuming a lot of organized crime and illegal activity takes place on these sites.
That's what everybody is drawn to. That's what everybody wants to talk about whenever we're discussing things like this. But I like to remind people that this is just a marketplace, just because it's tied to the dark web doesn't mean that every single aspect of it is bad.
That's true, but have you watched Mr. Robot at all? Have you watched that show?
Yeah, I have.
You seen season 2?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, I don't know how much spoilers, but there's something that does relate to a dark web bust in that show.
Have I ever purchased anything on AlphaBay? No. No, I haven't. I've never even accessed the dark web.
From what I remember of Silk Road, there was a terms and services. I never really accessed that, but that's what I heard. And then and stuff like I think human trafficking, and there's a couple things that were actually explicitly not, what is it? They didn't want this happening on the marketplace.
Like I said, there are always going to be things attached to to talk about these things, but realistically, people are trading guns and sex trafficking using fiat. People like to harp on these dark web websites because the masses can't access them, but that's not all they're used for. Just like that's not all fiat is used for. Only a very small percentage of fiat is used for sex trafficking and buying guns.
Right, and then when you look at the fiat system, look how many major banks have been implicated in laundering scandals of epic proportions.
Yeah.
Deutsche Bank, HSBC, the different Dutch banks, different UK banks, all implicated in massive laundering scandals for organized crime, because the global black and gray markets are massive industries. They're as big, if not bigger, than the white market. So where does all that money go? How does it get washed? Well, it must have mechanisms in the system, in the traditional system, to work with and funnel all that money around. It's just that on the highest levels, these banks are likely in cahoots with the major organized crime elements of the planet.
Yep. That's why I like the decentralization of cryptocurrencies, because I know where my money is going. I know where it's been.
So is it safe to say that like AlphaBay was the largest market? That's where most cryptocurrency was actually being traded for physical goods?
I don't know about that, because you can actually buy things on Newegg using Bitcoin. You can buy things on
Overstock.
yeah, Overstock.com. You can buy things on what's that other one for computer parts? I don't even remember. There's another large one used for computer parts that allows Bitcoin transactions. Also, flights in Japan are starting to accept Bitcoin. Yeah, Microsoft is accepting Bitcoin now. So there's a lot of entities that are accepting Bitcoin now. All right. So that was the AlphaBay discussion that I wanted to talk about. Again, another controversy. The last thing that I wanted to discuss today was actually the USDT Tether. For those of you that don't know what Tether is, it is a cryptocurrency that is supposedly backed by $1 per coin. So for every single Tether, there is $1 backing it. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. There has actually recently been a study that has shown that there is a lot of money missing on this marketplace. And if you actually go on their website, they specifically say that they will not buy back your Tether for US dollars, which already adds a little bit of suspicion to the market. Why will an exchange only do one-way exchanges? How does that make any sense? And a lot of people think it's because they don't have as many US dollars backing Tether as they say they do. Because let's be honest, what profit would they take from that by creating this cryptocurrency if that were true? So a lot of people think that that $240 million market cap that it currently has is bullshit and it's bogus. I was actually reading a few posts on Reddit that said last time they did an audit back in like March, I believe it was, whenever the market cap was around $40 million or $50 million, they were missing like $1 million. And now it's at $240 million. A lot of people use this currency to get out of the market quickly whenever they think that there's going to be a downtrend, because it is pegged to the US dollar and they won't lose as much money. But knowing this information and seeing that it's not actually pegged to the US dollar because they don't have that many dollars backing it really changes the scenario a lot. Essentially, that means that this could go to $0 if people realize that it's not actually being backed like it says it is. So I'd like to know what y'all's thoughts are. Have y'all ever used Tether to get out of the market whenever you see a downtrend? Like, what have you guys noticed with this market?
It's kind of scary, to be honest. Now, it seems like a common theme in the crypto space. One scam or vaporware story after another.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait, so is there an actual site where you can withdraw your Tether into US dollars?
No, there is not. So this is actually that post that I was talking about. Let me go to... This is actually that post that was posted 1 day ago. It says Tether scares the hell out of me. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. For the unfamiliar, Tether is a cryptocurrency pegged to the US dollar, like I talked about. You can see on their transparency page that they've issued about $270 million worth of their coin, up from $50 million just 3 months ago. In theory, that means that they've been paid $220 million US dollars over the past 3 months. Except back in April, their bank stopped allowing them to take in wire transfers from outside of Taiwan. So where the hell did they get $220 million? So let's talk about that. If their bank does not allow wire transfers from anyone outside of Taiwan, and most of the users that are using this are based in the United States or Japan, where the fuck is that money coming from? This is an open discussion, guys. I really want to know what y'all think of this.
I mean, I never saw the use in Tether because if you can't transfer immediately to dollars, like it's better to just put your you're going to another cryptocurrency if you're trying to get out of another one.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've never used Tether.
Yeah, I mean, most U.S. exchanges, when you're out of the market, you're in a computer fiat on their exchange, basically. And, you know, even if you can't withdraw it, like, you know, I don't think on Bittrex you can't withdraw fiat, but I don't believe so anyway. You can correct me if I'm wrong there.
No.
But, I mean, you can still sit in cash on Bittrex. Can't you? Or maybe you can't. Yeah, actually, I'm totally wrong there. Sorry.
Not on Bittrex, you can't. Yeah, but if you put it into fiat, then you get taxed come tax season. Yes, that is correct. If you pull your money out of cryptocurrencies into fiat, you automatically get taxed on that transaction. But technically, I mean, if we're getting technical, you're supposed to pay taxes on every single transaction that you produce with any cryptocurrency. That's a really interesting topic to talk about as well. A lot of people don't actually understand how taxes work on these transactions. So in the United States, every single transaction is supposed to get annotated. So anytime you place a trade on any exchange, you need to be marking down that transaction as having occurred. Now, if you are holding on to a specific cryptocurrency for longer than a year, you only have to pay capital gains tax on that specific investment. But if you are day trading or swing trading, every single one of those has to be paid in income tax. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. I need you guys to understand that because I don't want any of you guys to get caught up in tax fraud. If you're in the United States. That is only the United States. I don't know any other country's laws on that, but I've talked to a lawyer as far as that goes, and that is what I've learned. Joe, that sucks, man. I feel bad for that guy too. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how they have to pay their taxes. I mean, if you're going to be dumb, though, and go out and spend a shit ton of money on the cryptocurrency that you've owned and not pay a single dime in taxes on those cryptocurrencies, you probably deserve what you get in that scenario. Like, don't live a lavish lifestyle and not pay taxes. That's just the dumbest thing you can do. The IRS is going to catch up with you on that. And that kind of boils down to, like, did that person really know what they were investing in, or did they just get lucky? Because we were talking earlier, a lot of people don't understand how blockchains even work, and yet they're investing in this. That's why I think that it's very vital that people understand everything about this and how they, essentially how they need to invest smart and how to. My whole platform that I'm trying to build is informing people on all of these intricacies that are tied to cryptocurrencies. And I'm really happy that you guys are here to share this with me, because it is a really beautiful time. I think that cryptocurrencies are going to thrive over the next few years. I think that we're going to see a huge market cap increase over the next 5 to 10 years. And people that are saying that we're already in a bubble, I think are very uninformed. I think that we're going to see bigger and better things to come with cryptocurrencies. That's crazy. Will the IRS know the price of what I bought in for and what I've gained? How will they determine what I owe? They will not, dude. They are not tracking how much you have made and how much you have put into it. That is on you to inform the IRS, this is how much I've earned, this is how much I've put in. But I will tell you this, they are starting to get incredibly smart, and they're starting to create technology that allows them to easily track transactions on blockchains. So if you are not using an anonymous blockchain, then I highly advise you to claim everything on your taxes. Otherwise, the IRS will catch you and you will get in trouble. So please, please, please pay your taxes.
Keep records of all your trades. Just have a little spreadsheet open and keep notes of everything you buy and when you sell, and you should be fine. You bring that to an accountant later, you'll be okay. But if you don't keep any records of anything, you're going to be in trouble later when they come calling.
Yeah, do not get in trouble with the IRS, man. Yeah, but not everybody has to understand how a blockchain works in order to invest in cryptos. Like, everybody uses smartphones, but only a few can program those. I agree with that, man. Not everybody has to understand how cryptos work. And the thing is once mass adoption happens, very few people will actually understand how blockchain technology works. So let's think about that for a second. If everybody with a smartphone in the world is using blockchains on a daily basis, how many of those people do you actually think are going to understand how blockchains work? A very small fraction, but it's in your best interest to understand how they work. That way you can gain the fundamentals that you need to know how the markets are going to play out. Like I was talking about earlier, it's good to have a little bit of technical and fundamental analysis behind your belt so that you can understand how the market is going to play out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that those are really good guidelines to invest/trade to. Like, you shouldn't be a one-trick pony, basically.
Absolutely.
You're going to get burned one way or another if you do that. You still can get burned even if you do use both those techniques.
There won't be mass acceptance until transaction speeds increase by 2,000% from current levels. Well, Joe, that's what EOS is trying to accomplish, man. They're trying to accomplish millions of transactions per second. And if they can accomplish that, EOS is going to be the next big thing. And I truly do believe that Dan Larimer has the ability to make that happen.
So now that you brought up EOS, I have a general question for everyone because I'm just curious what everyone's take is on. One of the most interesting things I've found about the ICO has been like the amount of money that gets put in there every day. And I'm curious if people think that there's any way that there'll be, a sustained 2 million plus contribution to EOS every day for the next 345 days.
Why not, man?
Well, I don't know. I'm just curious what other people think.
Okay, so EOS is currently in the top 10 on market capitalization, right? Right?
Yeah, it's number 11 right now, but yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I'm sorry. Number 11.
No problem.
But it's been in the top 10 like for a few days, but so it has a lot of market capitalization already, and it's only been 2 weeks. And if you look at other currencies that are in the top 10, look at their daily. Let's just take a look at it. Okay. So if you look at all of these in the top 10, look at their daily volume, their 24-hour volume: 853 million, 709 million, 89 million, 312 million, 185 million, 26 million. All of these have over $2 million in volume every single day. EOS has had $38 million in volume over the past 24 hours. Now you take a look at that and you say, how can it sustain $2 million daily? Well, really fucking easy, apparently. As long as
we're only on day 15.
Right, but as long as people find a value in EOS and think that it has potential to do well, it will succeed in its 24-hour volume. That $2 million that it requires daily is nothing.
I don't think it requires $2 million. I just threw that out there as because it seems to be 3, 2, 3, 3, 3. That seems to be the target for where people are investing currently.
I totally agree with you. I mean, you looking at it, this is uncharted territory, a 365-day long ICO. Of course, everybody looking at it because there's a lot of people who went all in really early, and then you realize, damn, this is like a marathon. How am I going to keep up with this for so long, right? Like, I know because I bought in on a few of the earlier windows, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, to sustain this kind of buying for the rest of the year, it's like you got to be a pretty big whale.
Or you could just be creating arbitrage daily if you're waiting for those cheaper ICOs.
It's true. A lot of guys are making money every day through arbitrage and just bringing them to market. Well, maybe not right now with the current downturn.
No, I think they are, because if you look, they had a $37 million 24-hour volume. I'm pretty sure people are dumping those on the market as soon as they get them.
Absolutely. But
Yep, sure seems that.
But $2 million daily to keep that $1.50 price, that's really not that much money in the spectrum of things, man. And I think it's easily sustainable. So,
yeah, but this isn't churn in the market. This is a direct contribution to EOS, the company.
Right.
And that's where, if you keep that up, this is such a monumental, ridiculous level of fundraising for something that right now is just an idea on a white paper.
It's not just an idea. There definitely is code to back it up. Dan Larimer is the code.
What do you mean? That doesn't make any sense.
How does that not make sense, man?
How do you say there's code written and Dan Larimer is the code? Dan
Larimer is the CTO of EOS. He has a proven track record of producing what he says he's going to produce. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fine and all, but that still doesn't mean that anything's going to come of this. And that, I mean, you can't say just because someone in the past has done it means that they're going to do it in the future. I mean, I'll say this. With the amount of money they've raised, there's no way they won't get something out the door, because you could just hire a crap ton of coders to just put anything out the door. But
there's some people that seem to think that the code is already written and ready to go. Like, I've been discussing this with people that are way smarter than I am, that seem to think that it's already completely done and they're just waiting to put out the beta.
And are they thinking that they're going to wait the entire year before they put that out?
No, I don't think so. I think it would be in their best interest to put that out like somewhere in between, because if they want this to continue on, they're going to have to show some, developments.
Right. The theory goes that they masterminded this year-long ICO window, and they already roadmap, tidbits of info or development along the way that they know will prop the price up as interest starts to fall down. They already have something already waiting. Again, if they've already developed most of the platform, or the beta is already ready to go, and they're just, again, masterminding this plot, year-long play where they have 4 major announcements along the way and 4 major reveals. This just might be a really smart way to maximize as much profit out of an ICO and build something really good out of it.
Absolutely. I mean, why not? Again, capitalism at its finest.
Exactly. This is smart. They're going to pull in more money steadily, consistently. And again, these guys might be smart. They might have, like I said, maybe 4 installments of good news to come that's going to keep this price pretty steady for the next 360 days.
Let's just be real. Dan Larimer is brilliant. He's a brilliant mind. So him coming up with this idea of producing, small developments over the year, that would be nothing short of his brilliance.
I find this part of the gamesmanship, or even like game theory of this ICO, to be the most fascinating thing about EOS right now. I find this ICO structure to be really interesting.
Well, look at the Ethereum ICO. I don't know if you know this, but Ethereum had an ICO. Look at what they've accomplished. And they didn't make nearly as much on the Ethereum ICO, because at that time, ICOs were kind of like feared. People feared ICOs because ICOs before Ethereum were basically just scams. There were a lot of scams before Ethereum came along. And I think people have kind of warmed up to the idea that not all ICOs are bad. Now, I say that with a grain of salt, though, because a lot of ICOs are bad, and a lot of ICOs generate shit coins that companies are trying to say, actually solve something, when in all actuality, they don't solve shit. They're just fucking vaporware. But when it comes to something like EOS, I actually believe what they're trying to accomplish is real. They're trying to accomplish 0 transaction fees. They're trying to accomplish infinite scalability. I genuinely believe that they're trying to do this. And that's why I've invested in it. Now, if you don't believe what they're trying to accomplish is real, then don't invest in it at all. I'm not trying to shill this at all. I'm not trying to create FOMO at all. That is not my goal. You should definitely invest in what you believe in personally. If you think something accomplishes something on the blockchain, invest in that. If you think that it could serve a daily purpose, invest in that. Did I turn my video off? No, I did not. Did my video turn off, guys?
Let me take a look.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, look, we're online. We're looking good.
Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up everything that we discussed tonight. So we talked about Bitcoin Unlimited versus Bitcoin Core. We talked about protecting your investments. We talked about AlphaBay and what has occurred there, and you know, what could potentially happen due to that. And we talked about Tether and why I think it's a very dumb investment. So don't put your money in Tether, guys, because there's nothing backing it there. What else did we talk about, guys? Enlighten me.
Talked about AlphaBay going down.
Yep, we talked about AlphaBay.
Hey, we still have a minute. I'd love to touch on some of the coins blowing up on Cryptopia.
Let's save that, man.
Fair enough.
Let's save that. We'll discuss that next week. How does that sound? Because that could take a while to discuss all of that.
Those pesky master nodes.
Yeah, definitely. Let's discuss that next week. Does anybody have any other questions about anything that we talked about today? Need for browser to buy in on EOS ICO. So if you're in the United States, unfortunately, you cannot buy into the ICO. However, there is nothing stopping you from buying into the markets. The thing is, EOS, the development team, cannot sell you tokens due to the legality behind it. The SEC does not recognize these tokens as an asset or a security, so they can't sell it to people in the United States. However, if you want to get around that, you can use a proxy. Now, do that at your own risk. I'm not telling you to do that. Definitely don't pin that on me if you get caught. But that is a way around that. I'm not telling people to do that again. Please let's make that very clear. I'm not telling people to use a proxy.
I think that American mechanism is just on their front end of their website. When it comes to funding the contract and redeeming your coins, I don't think anything stopping the American users from getting access to it. It's just to get through that part on the website, which gives you access to the address and some funding details and instructions. But again, you could probably find those online without having to actually access the site directly.
Yeah. Clayford said to do it. No, I didn't, Sean. Don't you fucking say that.
I just put that on my Ethereum message on the blockchain when I sent my money in.
Clayford said to do this. Fuck you guys.
Did I do something wrong?
Oh yeah, no, you're totally fine, KJ.
Honestly, you guys can get EOS at market on the markets for similar to ICO window prices.
Cheaper,
So-
actually.
Yeah, generally even cheaper. So really, don't have to bend over backwards to go through the ICO process. Right now, you can get them at market for fair undervalue.
I have a question. I see the low for EOS was 85 cents. How low would it have to go for you to bail? I honestly would not bail during the next year until EOS is actually implemented and we see where it stands on the actual market, seeing how it's used. I would not bail.
Yeah,
But-
you got to give it at least 6 to 12 months to play out this EOS card.
Yeah, we
If in
need
12 months. There's nothing that's happened, and the price is tanking. We can discuss this again later. But I think in 12 months we'll have a very promising, beginning to EOS on the market.
I think we need to see the actual platform. Like, until we actually see a product, it's really, really hard for me to even think of bailing out on this, because the potential for it to succeed is just so incredible. But if nobody else has any questions about anything we discussed today, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. This was an incredible night, guys. I really appreciate everybody that participated. KJ and Crypto Jake, thank you guys for attending again for the third week in a row. I really appreciate you guys always coming in and putting in your 2 cents, because it's good to have, differing opinions, because this is what sparks debates and this is where ideas come from. So I really appreciate you two guys always coming in every single week and putting in your 2 cents. Everybody that participated in chat on YouTube, thank you so much for attending as well. I hope to see you guys again next week. Jake, KJ, do you guys have anything else left to say?
No, just thanks again for hosting us. These are always fun.
Yeah, man, thanks for having us. And of course, shout outs to everybody in the chat, including our boy Joe, Dade, all those guys. Thanks for everybody coming out. We don't mind shooting it back and forth a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you guys, Joe and Dade. I really do appreciate y'all's differing opinions. I do get triggered by some things, but at the end of the day, I appreciate differing opinions just as well as my own. So thank you guys so much for attending, and I hope to see you next week. That's it for this evening. Clayford08 out.